The alert came while two of the researchers bickered over ways to maintain monodirectional energy drain, and Kiana Arden had never been so glad for an interruption. These Radiant Council scientists were geniuses, it could not be argued, but she had always preferred action to debate. Stepping away from the table, she opened her comm and scanned the message, expecting a standard update. Her eyes widened when she realized it was the warning alert she'd placed on the lab airlock. It had opened from the exterior. Her pulse jumped. The scanner she set up would only go off for one reason, and one alone. It recognized her quarry. Havoc was here. Turning, she marched toward the door, ignoring Volkov's inquisitive stare. The Azure Court paid her salary, kept her alive in the dangerous forge, but she did not care about the Azure King's petty politics. The only thing she cared about was sating her thirst for vengeance. Havoc would make for Dr. Winter's office, assuming the head researcher would be there. That was good. Vanguard would wait for her, and when they stood face to face again, Vanguard would win. Justice for her friends was within reach. As her hand brushed the pommel of her sword, Vanguard clenched her teeth. Justice, revenge, whatever she was calling it these days. Hex, Longdraw, and Sly would have it. Then she could rest and be done with this. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for another episode of Season 3, Cry Havoc. Last time, Wolf and Quickdraw planned for their infiltration of the Radiant Council lab. There don't seem to be any ways in until Quick suggests using the airlock in the exterior wall of the lab. They set a plan in motion to send a pair of agents to create a distraction on the cargo deck while they exit the station through one of the maintenance airlocks and spacewalk to the lab. The crew doesn't realize there are extra security measures on the cargo deck, and the two saboteurs are quickly cornered and caught. Wolf, Quickdraw, and a half-dozen Syndicate agents infiltrate the maintenance hub near the dormitories. Wolf tries to talk the maintenance tech down, but he goes for the alarm and Quickdraw shoots him. They make the spacewalk and reach the Radiant Council lab. Fidget, the crew's hacker, gets them in through the airlock, and they are faced with a choice. Go left and head toward the labs, or go right and find Dr. Winter's office. Wolf opts for Dr. Winter's office, but on the way they run into a patrol of 4 Azure Court soldiers. The crew takes them down with ease, though some of their EV suits are damaged. They arrive at Dr. Winter's office and open the door, but the researcher is not waiting inside. Instead, Vanguard has been waiting for Wolf. Wolf tells Quick to go back to the junction and head for the labs, find the researchers, and get them out. She then steps inside, and the two warriors face off. Wolf adjusts her grip on Deathmaker and stares down Vanguard across the room. Silence fills the space between them as they watch for an opening, for the right moment to strike. There was a time when this heartbeat between stillness and action filled Wolf with excitement, when it was life. But now there is only dread. Vanguard plays for keeps, and based on their last encounter, if Wolf wants to get through this alive, she'd have to fight like she wants to. One of us is not leaving this room alive, Vanguard says. I hope that's not true, Van. I don't want to kill you, Wolf replies. I can't say the same, Havoc. And Vanguard attacks. And it looks like it's time to enter the fray. So let's envision our objective. I think it's probably pretty obvious, but Wolf has no desire to kill Vanguard, only defeat her, preferably knocking her unconscious. So I think I'm going to set the objective as incapacitate Vanguard. And since I think that killing her would actually be easier, I'm going to set this rank as formidable. Now, I think we can make a good argument for this roll being plus iron, since Vanguard is attacking and Wolf is in the thick of it at close quarters. So let's roll it up and find out. Rolling plus iron, which is plus 3. Here we go. Got a 4 on the action score, a 10, and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit for Enter the Fray, I can either take plus 2 momentum, or I can take control. Wolf is going to seize control of this fight, so let's go ahead and envision it. Vanguard charges forward with an overhead chop, blade whistling through the air. Havoc saw the shift in her hips, the swing of her arm, and deflects the blow with ease, stepping past into the left. She doesn't hesitate and brings her sword down, aiming for Vanguard's right shoulder, in the hopes of ending the fight quickly. Let's go ahead and strike. This is plus iron, and since Wolf is a blade master, we get plus 1 to that as well. So plus 4 on this. Strong hit. All right, a 9 on the action score, a 4 and a 5 on the challenge dice. We're going to mark progress twice and stay in control. So the blow lands, and Vanguard grunts and curses, almost driven to her knees. But the blade only cuts through the fabric of her jacket, sparking off the pauldron hidden underneath. She stumbles away, trying to bring her blade up in a defensive sweep. Wolf shifts away as well, choosing not to follow after her, keeping Deathmaker back and ready to strike again. Come on, Van. Twice now we've crossed blades. You know I'm the better fighter. Your armor might hold against a few strikes, but eventually I'll wear you down. Can't we just talk through this instead? I tried to explain why I left, but we never really got a chance to talk through it. And I think here, instead of striking again, we're going to roll gain ground. Now, Wolf is trying to barter and sort of pacify Vanguard here. So unfortunately, I think it's going to be plus heart, which is only plus 1 for Wolf. Now, I've been debating whether or not to assign a bond to Vanguard to represent the connection that they once had. But since I don't think it would have a mechanical effect in this instance with gain ground, I'm just going to leave it nebulous for the moment. So we're going to roll plus 1. Here we go. A 6 on the action score, 8 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. I'm tempted to take progress here, but I think instead I'm just going to take plus 2 to my momentum, which is going to take my momentum up to 7. I think maybe this represents Vanguard's commitment to her vengeance being shaken a bit, both because of that absolutely ferocious blow, but also because Havoc keeps making it clear that she doesn't want this. Or, I don't know, maybe Vanguard just needs a moment to recover. Vanguard studies her, and realizing Wolf is not taking an aggressive stance, she rolls her right shoulder and grimaces. You claim to be a healer now, but you haven't lost any of your speed or strength. I've been on the run. It doesn't provide much opportunity to grow soft. Wolf smiles. I could look at that shoulder for you if you'd like. I've gotten pretty good at caring for bruises. Vanguard shakes her arm and then re-grips her sword. Stop trying to make friends, Havoc. You don't know what I've lost. Wolf sighs. I've lost too, Van. I lost you and the rest of the team. Look, you're right to be angry, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to fight in the war that was coming. I didn't want any of you to get caught up in it either. What happened to them anyways? Was it a Forge Spawn hunt? What happened? And I think once again, we're going to roll gain ground plus heart, as Wolf is continuing to try and keep a conversation going and stave off the fight as long as possible. So once again, plus 1 here. 4 for the action score, a 5 and a 2 on the challenge dice for another weak hit. This time I'm going to take progress. So we're up to 3 out of 10 on our progress track for this fight. Vanguard stares at her for a long moment. Then she says, "The collective sold us out, assigned us to find you, and when we didn't, they must have thought we were in on it. Gave us a false lead that led into an Elder League ambush. We made a fighting retreat and they blew up our ship. Sly never had a chance. We thought we'd made it to safety in a nearby town, but PF2 were there. Titan shot Draw in the head. Hex was hit too and dying. He covered my escape. They thought we were with you, and they wrote us off. Wolf lowers her sword, takes a step forward. I had no idea. I didn't breathe a word to any of you about what I was thinking because I didn't want them to have even a shred of doubt about you all. I didn't think they would sign death warrants on their best team. I understand why you hate me. I wish you could understand just how sorry I am. And, you know, not to keep going back to the well, but I think it's appropriate to gain ground once more with Hart. Wolf has a better understanding of what's going on now, and she is, I think, genuinely trying to reach out to her hurting friend. Well, let's see if her luck holds. Once again, +1 on this. That's a 5 on the action score, and 2 3s on the challenge dice for a strong hit with a match. I was not expecting that. If I'm being honest, I was kind of expecting a miss that would lead to a lot of trouble, but I think with a strong hit and a match, this fight is over. And I think because Wolf has talked her down, I don't think we even need to roll on decisive action. This isn't really a fight anymore. It's a genuine conversation between two old friends. So let's take a moment and envision that. Vanguard grits her teeth as tears well in her eyes. Maybe you were trying to protect us by not telling any of us, but you still betrayed us, betrayed your team. There have to be consequences for that. Wolf steps closer, sheathing her sword and holding her hands open-palmed. I'll carry that guilt and sorrow the rest of my days. And knowing now that the collective set you up because they thought you were helping me just makes me want to go back and burn that whole place to the ground. But I can't go back and change the choices I made. But I can choose to do better now. That's why I don't want to fight you, Van. You're right. You've lost so much. But we don't have to lose each other again. Please, Vanguard, choose a different path. Vanguard bows her head, tears dripping onto the metallic deck plates. And then with a slump of her shoulders, she too sheathes her sword. She places her face in her hands and sinks down to her knees, great sobs racking her body. Wolf approaches, crouches down beside her, and wraps her in a tight embrace. They remain there for a moment, two women sharing a loss that neither knew another could carry. And then, after a moment, Vanguard coughs out a chuckle, wiping at her eyes. Wolf tenses, unsure if that chuckle means something sinister, but Vanguard merely says, "Looks like we're both traitors now, Havoc. I've forsaken my vow of vengeance. Hex would be so disappointed." Havoc reaches down and clasps a hand to her cheek, turning Vanguard's teary face to meet her eyes. No, he wouldn't. And you're not forsaking your vow. We'll get revenge, all right, but not against each other. Against the Hunters Collective. Vanguard nods and says, I lost my way, Havoc. I fell in with the Phantoms of the Azure Court because I needed somewhere to hide out, something to do. Veiled Rest is a contested sector, and the Phantoms aren't doing much to make life better. I know. That's why I'm trying to free those Radiant Council scientists. They shouldn't be building weapons, they should be building tech that helps us thrive in the Forge. Vanguard, will you help me? She takes a deep breath and wipes more tears away. Then she says, "Don't call me that. I'm going by a different name now. Kiana Arden." Wolf taps herself on the chest. Alexis Wolf. I'm glad to have found you, Kiana Arden. I think we'll make good friends. Arden chuckles again and says, just don't leave me. I've got pretty severe separation anxiety. Wolf laughs and hugs her again. Come on, we should move. Are the scientists all in the lab, including Dr. Winter? Arden stands and says, yes, but so is Commander Volkov and a half-dozen Azure Court soldiers. Oh, and I received a report while I was waiting that 2 individuals were caught down by the cargo hold. They with you? Wolf swears, yes. She hesitates for a moment and looks into Arden's eyes, searching for any sign that this whole thing is an act. It doesn't seem likely. After all, if her intention was to kill Wolf, she has left herself open. Old habits kick in, as she decides to trust her old friend. Have you heard of the Syndicate of the Infinite Ravens? The smugglers? Yes, I've heard of them. That's how you got into the station? Wolf nods. Those 2 were supposed to create a distraction. We can't leave them in Azure Court hands. Once they realize who they work for, it'll just make things worse. Arden looks as though she's thinking for a moment. Then she seems to come to a decision. I'll help you get them out. But you're going to have to trust me. I know that may be difficult since 10 minutes ago I trust you, Wolf interrupts. Do you think your people will be able to take care of Volkov and the others? It'll be an even fight. We should probably run along and help out if we can. Arden says, I can activate a signal jammer over the lab, so they won't be able to call for reinforcements. Then I'll go get your 2 saboteurs and meet you in the docking bay. I assume you're planning to get out the way you came in? Wolf nods. Ship is set to leave in a couple hours. If things went really poorly, I plan to call in my ship and have it dock in the lab airlock, but I'm hoping that it won't come to that. Yeah, just make sure things don't go poorly. I'll meet you in the docking bay, and we'll get out of here. Are you sure about this? The Azure Court are going to hunt you if you help us like this, Wolf says. Arden flashes a dangerous grin. They're welcome to try. I let my anger blind me to the injustices going on here. We used to help people, rid worlds of forged spawn that were putting lives in danger. The new Azure King is no different. I'm ready for a change. Wolf places a hand on her shoulder. Thank you for listening and forgiving. We have so much to catch up on when we get out of here. Arden nods and says, the docking bay. I'll see you soon. And Wolf, please don't leave me behind this time. So that is definitely not how I expected that fight to go, but gotta say, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think that Kiana Arden will make a much better ally than she will enemy. So the 2 of them part as they leave Dr. Winter's office. Arden heads off towards the entrance into the labs on her way to recover the 2 Syndicate saboteurs, while Wolf follows back down the hallway that she, Quick, and the others came down originally. Now, I think this whole fight really, the fight only took a moment or 2, and then they had this conversation. So I think this really only took maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then Wolf is on her way, following back after the other Syndicate members. So I'm going to ask the Oracle if she catches up to them before they make it to the labs. Because, of course, I think Quick Draw is probably hurrying to get to the labs to rescue the researchers. So I think it's possible that they get there before Wolf is able to catch up with them. But I don't think it's likely. I'm not even sure if it's 50-50. I feel like Wolf is probably going to move pretty quickly on her own. And Quick Draw, while moving quickly with his Syndicate soldiers, is probably going to be at least mildly cautious. So I think it's going to be likely that Wolf catches up to them before they reach the labs. 99 on the dice is a no. A no with a match, which could be some sort of twist or complication. So it's good to know that the dice giveth and the dice taketh away. If Wolf doesn't catch up to them in time, that means that Quickdraw and the others reach the labs and enter into a fight with these Azure Court soldiers who are protecting the scientists. And then we've got this extreme result or twist. I mean, are there more guards or are the scientists not there? Now, this is an interesting thought. When Kiana Arden left the science lab to go wait in Dr. Winter's office, Commander Volkov noticed her leaving and had sort of a questioning thought there. Does he have some way of determining that there are intruders in this place and they then set up an ambush for Quickdraw and the Syndicate? I think that's likely. So I'm going to say 75 or less is going to be a yes. That's a 100, so no, that's not it at all. Okay, my dice have decided to roll high. So if that's not the case, then maybe it's just that the Syndicate arrives and get into a fight with the Azure Court soldiers. But I feel like I'm tied to this extreme result because things have to go from good to worse when we're playing this game, right? We just had a really good outcome, so we have to follow that up with something really terrible. So I think I know what it is, and I think I can envision it. Wolf is sprinting down the hallways, trying to catch up with Quickdraw and the Syndicate. But Quickdraw must be pushing them hard because she does not see them around each corner as she passes. She gets back to where the airlock is and she cuts down the alternate passageway that should lead towards the labs. And as she's sprinting down that way, she hears the sound of weapons fire going off. Battle has been joined between the Azure Court and the Syndicate of Infinite Ravens. And Wolf is sprinting down. She draws out her sword as she is making her way towards this open door at the end of this hallway, and she can see laser blasts flashing out. She can see Syndicate members crouched down, shooting around doors. It's chaos. And she goes sprinting down. There's a shout that comes from inside, and she sees this flash of light, and it almost blinds her, but she gets her hands up in front of her face in time to shield at least some of the light away from her eyes. And there's screaming and yelling coming from inside, and the weapons fire is continuing, but it is starting to abate. As I think Wolf hears one of the scientists, maybe even Dr. Winter, yell, "Containment breached!" Wolf sprints up and she runs straight into it. She gets right into the fray, if you will. And I think once again, we're going to roll a battle here because I think this is chaotic. We're not really sure what's going on. So Wolf just wades in with Deathmaker. I think she's looking for Commander Volkov. She's looking to, she's had a rematch with Kiana Arden already. Might as well have a rematch with Commander Volkov. So let's go ahead and roll our battle move plus iron, which is +3. Here we go. 7 for the action score, a 9 and a 5 for the challenge dice, which is a weak hit. On a weak hit, you achieve your objective, but of course, not without cost. Pay the price. Let's roll on pay the price before we envision what achieving our objective looks like. 43. The environment or terrain introduces a new hazard. Perfect. Once again, the dice are confirming what I already suspected. So let's picture Wolf sprinting down this pristine white hallway. There are a couple Syndicate soldiers in the doorways, kind of like leaning around with their laser pistols, firing into the room. There are more Syndicate inside, including Quick Draw, who's firing off his laser pistols. Wolf sprints into the room past the Syndicate soldiers at the main entryway, and she sees a group of scientists cowering in a corner. She sees a central table that's been overturned, and Commander Volkov is hiding behind that with a couple Azure Court soldiers. A couple Azure Court soldiers are already down. One or two of the Syndicate soldiers has been hit and are also down. Wolf also has a moment to recognize that the plexiglass viewing port has been punctured by either a small explosion or concerted laser blasts, and there is some sort of strange light fluctuating from inside of there. And Wolf doesn't quite know what's going on with that. She's very concerned about it, but for the moment, the more pressing threat is these Azure Court soldiers. Quick Draw, I think, sees her motion into the room and says, "Lay down some cover and fire." The laser blasts are going all around, trying to suppress these Azure Court soldiers as Wolf just sprints forward, places a hand on the table, the overturned table, and vaults over it and strikes down. Commander Volkov dives to the side and avoids her blow, but she clips one of the other Azure Court soldiers and he slams into the table, his head rocking against it. And there's a moment as he sort of looks like he's stunned as Wolf lands and kicks out at him again, knocking him against the table a second time, pushing that table forward a little bit. She then turns towards where Commander Volkov is scrambling to his feet, and he pulls up his laser pistol and pulls the trigger on it, and nothing happens. He looks at it, he looks at her, he throws it down, and he pulls out essentially a stun baton, and they're facing off against each other. And he goes to trigger the stun baton, that little like electrical probe at the end of it. And again, nothing happens. And I think Wolf is starting to get an inkling of what may be going on here. And she smiles at Volkov and says, "Commander Volkov, I will give you the opportunity to surrender gracefully." He is about to surrender, and then he kind of takes a look around the room and realizes that all of the weapons fire has stopped. And he looks back at that plexiglass viewing port into the lab. And then he looks back at Wolf and he smiles and says, "Ah, Mender Wolf, good to see you again. I suspect I know what's happened here, and I suspect maybe you know as well. None of us have weapons here except our batons and your sword. Now, I've seen you wield that before, and I understand you are quite dangerous with it, but I'm not so certain that your friends are as adept with their hand weapons. I trust my soldiers to stand up against them in a hand-to-hand fight. Now," and he drops down into a defensive stance, "if you want me to surrender, you're going to have to drive me to the ground and force my baton out of my hand." Wolf looks at him and says, "Commander, it's more likely that I'll just cut your hand off." And she steps forward with a hard slash. He brings the baton up to deflect it, and the sword essentially just shears halfway through the baton. She twists her wrist and just yanks it out of his hand. He sees it clatter on the ground and then looks to her and says, "Ah, yes, well, I suppose if you agree to not harm me and my men, I will offer my surrender." Wolf says, "Quick, don't hurt anyone else. We have an agreement, Commander." At that, the battle is over, But the lights in this room begin to flicker. Wolf, looking over at Dr. Yelena Winter, who rises up from the spot where she was cowering, says, Dr. Winter, good to see you again. How long do we have before the station loses power? Dr. Winter says, I'm not sure exactly, but the rate at which this part of the station is beginning to fluctuate power, it's not going to be long. We need to contain that crystal. Wolf nods and says, tell me, do you still have the Faraday cage? Yes, of course, it's right in there. But, Wolf, before you go in there, you have to understand, we've made adjustments to the crystal. We created a device to amplify it. It's too dangerous to step inside. We all should be moving away from this area. Wolf sighs and says, so going in there is going to, what, kill me? Tell me what it's going to do. I'm not really sure, unfortunately. But I can't imagine it's good for your nervous system to be that close to an amplified version of that crystal. Great. All right. Wolf is going to look around, and she is going to, I think, look for some like sealant foam to see if she can cover that hole and maybe stop it from draining, or at least slow the drain of energy coming from inside of there. So to do that, we're going to check our gear. See if you have a specific helpful item. We're going to roll plus supply, which is +4. 5 on the action score, a 10 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a miss. On a miss, you don't have it, and the situation grows more perilous. Pay the price. So I think she finds a canister of sealant foam, and she goes up to the window, and she sprays it over the hole, and then, unfortunately, as it solidifies, cracks spider out from where the hole was, and the rest of the pane of glass gives way, and Wolf and the others all kind of shrink back a little bit. She says, right, everyone out, and they retreat, and Wolf is going to leap over this now broken area as everybody else is retreating out of the room, and she is going to rush for the crystal. She sees the cage on the other side of the room, and the crystal has been placed into this device that is sitting in the center of this small lab, and it is pulsating in light. And I think as she gets closer, her vision starts to blur as she is experiencing pretty severe vertigo, and she is stumbling forward, trying to find her way to it. We are going to do an old-fashioned face danger here to see if she can grab a hold of this crystal and shove it into the Faraday cage. I think I can get away with saying plus iron here with strength, endurance, or aggression. I think this is endurance, as she is maintaining consciousness as long as she possibly can to grab this crystal out of the metallic frame in which it's been slotted into this machine, and then essentially chuck it into the Faraday cage, stumble over to it, slam it shut, and hopefully stop this energy drain from continuing. Plus iron, which is +3. Here we go. 5 on the action score, a 5 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a miss, but I've got 7 momentum. I'm going to burn that right here because I think otherwise Wolf may be in serious, serious trouble. So we're going to burn that down to 2. That's going to give us a weak hit. So on a weak hit, you succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move at -1. I think this is health. This is definitely a loss of health. So her health is going to go from a 5 down to a 4 as she starts feeling liquid trickling down from her ears and her nose and maybe even her eyes. And she is barely conscious at this point as everything has shrunk down to a small window, barely holding the darkness at bay. As she rips the crystal out of the frame of this device, she can feel the heat of it burning through her EV suit's gloves. And I think she has like sealed up her EV suit, but it was damaged. And so she doesn't know how much it's actually helping her. She pushes it into the Faraday cage and closes the sealed vessel. And almost instantly, that oppressive weight that was pressing down on her brain dissipates. But Wolf slumps against the wall and loses consciousness as she sees a blurry figure rushing towards her. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word, and if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, I'm at Errant Solo Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.